Hello again, once more, welcome back to the cellar, welcome to Leopard Street. This is another electronics video. Today we're going to be looking at using MQTT and JMRI. This is following a request from Archie 974. This is a comment on episode 78, my sort of general updatey video. I would certainly be interested on exactly how your layout is connected, as I've not seen anything about using MQTT. And finding out exactly what's involved would be great, especially as I would be interested in looking at some slight alternatives for a similar setup. I'd like to replace the wireless ESP32s with Ethernet enabled ones and a network switch, as my Wi-Fi situation is not particularly reliable. Yeah, I know that feeling. And in general, it'd be much rather run a cable. One big thing is how to connect JMRI, as it's been sort of glossed over in past videos. More detailed walkthrough of the setup would be much appreciated. Well, Archie 974. Keep watching. We're going to have a little look today. Now, I was down here earlier today because I figured I can show how things work now, but it's probably easier and better and a little bit more interesting to show how to connect something new. So, if I scan you around here to over here, you may notice two little red lights. I've added two ground signals. Now they are currently connected to board D. This end board in the middle here is board D. Its lighting controller, that's one of the reasons I connected those two, its lighting controller works. So I decided I would use that one. They're set up, they're under control with MQTT. We can have a little look at how the board handles that first. First time we're really going to start looking at a little bit of the software here. I'm going to skip over certain bits. I'm only going to look at the bits around MQTT for now, but you'll see. This is how the lights on the layout are controlled. In a slightly modified form, we'll also have a little look at how the points on the layout are controlled, and then sensors go back. So, on with the show. Okay, so using MQTT and JMRI to control things. First thing we're going to look at, this piece of software here, MQTT Explorer. So I'm pushing up full screen. This is connecting to my Raspberry Pi 4 upstairs, which runs the MQTT software. Free download. There's versions for Windows, Linux, all sorts of systems. Raspberry Pis are ideal for this sort of thing. So connect to that. And we have some information. So we're going to track, and here you can see I can control turnouts, sensors. So if I look at turnouts, you can see here all my various turnouts. Some are closed, some are thrown. And this, I can actually change them from here as well. I'm not going to at the minute because, yeah, anyway. Look at that. I've got sensors. So this has got all my block occupancy sensors, and it's got all the sensors for the points. We're going to have a look at how to set all this up in a minute. And here we have the lights. These are the bits we want to play with first off. So, what we've got, light D0. So we come over here, the topic, and this is how MQTT works. You have a topic, which up here is track/light/D0. And it's like a hierarchy. So as you see, I've got a little structure here. Track, which is the default for JMRI. If you want to use this with JMRI, the names matter. We'll have a little look at those in a minute, and then it'll pick them up for you. So track, light, D0. It's currently off. Well, if I turn, because we look over here, D0 off. Well, if I say on, has to be capitals, and I click publish, a light comes on. And if I say I want light D1 on as well, another light comes on. And you'll notice there's no rhyme or reason. Let me do another one. There's no rhyme or reason to which light is on which channel. It doesn't matter, which is just as well really, because these aren't all over the place. So I can go in, I can turn those off. Now as you see, this is a signal, but I'm literally just controlling the individual lights here. So I can make this say whatever I like. But the key bit is this MQTT topic business. So these lights can carry, it's just text. And they can say on, they can say off, and there's another one. 0.1. And I do that, and a light comes on but dim. These lights are connected to a TLC JMRI5947 board, which at the moment is behaving itself. We'll see how long that lasts for. That's a pulse width modulation controller. So it's rather good. It supports different LED brightnesses. Now here this is useful because the red LEDs are brighter than the green ones. So I can set them up however I like. And again, I can just tell it off. This software is useful because this shows what your MQTT broker thinks is going on. So, well, first off, I think we'll have a little look at the ESP32. And this is the software that runs the ESP32 for board D. So you have Leopard Street, board D, V2. And there's a little bit of heading software at the top. This is very, very specific to my layout. It's not particularly useful. If I can put a version of this up on GitHub, which I probably will, but it's not... I expect if you're going to use this, you're going to have to do something with it. Wi-Fi details, it just contains the username and the password, so it's not in the main one. And here we are. This is sort of defining what we're doing. This up here tells me what the display on the thing does, which obviously you can't see from here. What we've got at the moment... some bits that here need to be played around with. But yes, Wi-Fi working. It's got a signal strength indicator. Still connection issues upstairs. These are using Wi-Fi. These are the ones that got big antennas on them, specifically because the small antenna versions don't work very well. There we go. So there's a heartbeat signal on there. So yes, I can fully understand why somebody might want to go with the wired versions. I wanted to be able to keep them wireless so I didn't have to run too many wires about, but there we go. And what we're going to do, I'm going to skip over a lot of this until we get to the MQTT stuff. So we set up Wi-Fi, create a client. This here is the library you want. It's called pub sub client. It's a lightweight MQTT library, which works quite nicely. So here I have the server details, I've got a username, I've got a password. It doesn't really work unless you can get onto my network, so yeah, should probably blur it out, but I'll trust you not to abuse it since you can't get on my Wi-Fi. What port we've got, and we tell it uses the client, and I've got a state variable I've put in here. That's because I want to know whether it's running or not as a variable. In here, I've then got the controller settings. This is for the TLC5947 lighting controller. These are just what pins it's on. This uses an Adafruit library, and away we go. And then there's PCF85, whatever. There's all the various servos. It's only actually got two connected on here. That's my servo controller. I'm not going to go into that now. So we connect to the Wi-Fi. This bit here is all about over-the-air stuff. This starts the LED controller. And what I do a lighting test. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to turn all 24 lights on at half brightness. And we'll put that out, leave that on for a second, and then I'm going to turn them off. And this is basically so when I switch the thing on, all the lights come on. So by default they're on, I think, anyway. This just turns them into low intensity and then turns them off. This is all to do with the other input bits. That's all to do with the servos. Here we have MQTT. So check MQTT. This is the important bit. So there's a routine that checks the MQTT stuff. Does it straight away, and then I get a message saying pass or fail. So we go into the loop, check the Wi-Fi, check the MQTT again. This bit handles all the work, and there's not actually a lot of code in the main loop. That's it, just there. It checks MQTT. What that's going to do is see if there's any commands come in. If there has, it'll process them. It checks its little input-output board, which handles the block sensors. It loops the servos, and then it handles a few other bits and pieces, and then it flashes a light. So, first bit of MQTT is this callback statement. Now, you need this. We don't need it. If you don't have this, you won't receive any messages. So if all you ever want to do is publish stuff, you're fine. So what we get is we'll get a character array for the topic, which we don't get the length of. We then have a byte array. Now this is just the data we're going to get, and it'll tell us how long that is. You think, great, classic. So first thing I'm doing is I'm grabbing the length of that topic. Now I'm subscribed, as it says here, to track/turnout/plus, which means I want all the turnout messages, all the light messages. And this is how I run the thing. This at the top says if the topic is greater than 16. So we know we've got enough length in here to look at things. And I'll say, because this is the topic will be track/turnout/ a letter and then something else. And the letter is board ID, defined as a variable. So here that is D. I think it's defined up at the top somewhere. If I come up here and have a little look. Where are we? Where are we? Yeah, board ID D. It's a single character. I put it up there because I use this same software on a lot of different things. So that's fine. So what this is saying is if topics part 6 is a T, which means is that character there a T? So we've got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. So if character 6 is a T, we know it's a turnout message because it's the only one that begins with a T. And topic 14, which is over here, is the board ID. That's a turnout message for us. And then we go in and we extract the turnout number. And we say, oh, you know, is it between 1 and 16? Because this is all we can have. And we then look and say, well, is the payload? The payload in this case, if a turnout is closed or thrown, well, so I just use a C or a T. And if it's closed, whichever one it is, we close. And then I set the frog relays and so on and so forth. And if it's thrown, we do it the other way around. Here we get down to the lights. This is the bit we're looking at now. So track/light/ the board number and then the ID. So this is where we've got, if I go into the MQTT Explorer, this is this bit, track light D0. So we come back in here, if it's track light D0, so we'll say, right, it's a light message, we know that. We know it's for us because we know which board it is because we get all the light messages. So right, I want to know the light number, which is straight after the board number. And this is a little bit of a cheat. We point to that bit in the character string and then say, read me a number, and it'll read until the end of that string. It'll pick up any number that's in there. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 1,000, million, whatever's in there, it'll pick it up. Yeah, I know it's not going to be more than 255 though, which is why I put it in that. If it's more than 24, I don't care at the moment. And this says, if the payload starts with an O and it's got an N, the message is on. And what it does is it says, well, that's the light number. This TLC thing comes in and says, set that light number to full intensity. I'm going to modify that at some point. I want to be able to define what the default on brightness is. And then in here, there's this low bank and high bank. This is because I've only got 12 characters on a row. Anything with display buffer is handling the screen that's on board. It says, well, if it wasn't on, could it be off? Well, if the second character is an F, we know it's off. So it turns the light off. If the first character is an I, the message is intensity. And then it goes in and it just calculates how bright should that be. And away we go. And that's what we do when we get a message. So in the check MQTT, we say, well, if we're connected, because if we're not, we're going to do something else. So if we're not connected here, this is where we're going to connect. And this one's called Leopard Street Board D. You want the client names to be unique. There's various ways of doing that. In a system you're controlling, you can control it. Otherwise, you do things like use the IP address of the device you've got, or some sort of globally unique ID. The board ID works as well quite nicely. So it says, are we connected? Right. Sorry, it says here, are we not connected? And if we're not, we'll try and connect. And if we do, brilliant. We come in here, and this is where we say, these are the topics I want to subscribe to. Subscribe to all turnouts and subscribe to all lights. I could actually modify that. I could put a D in there, and then I'd get all the turnouts for board D, and then all the lights for board D. Yeah, I mean, I could. It doesn't matter. This is right, and here, yeah, we were connected, and now we're not. So I'm going to update the screen to say, no, not connected. This is so if things aren't working right, I can crawl under the layout, I can look at the screen, and I can see what the problem is. But that's it. Literally, we go into this, and it says, "Oh, have we connected? Have we got this?" Because if it sees something in here, it will call this callback function. Don't have to do anything else. It'll call this. And when you start out with this, the simple thing to do is write it all to the serial monitor. You'll get all the messages, and you can see them come out. And we come up here like this, and that's fine. But we can also send a message. Now, I'm trying to find where the code for doing that is. I think it's further down. Check Wi-Fi does the same thing as Wi-Fi on. Yeah, here we go, down here. So, if you want to send a message, that's it. One line. Very, very simple. I create a text buffer, so I create the topic I want. This is how I get back the block sensor messages. So there we are. That creates the topic idea. The message I'm going to send is inactive or active, and you just publish it, and it goes back. It's fairly straightforward. The pub sub client. I'm just seeing if there's any more bits down here. Yeah. So this is the servo handler. So this is how I handle my message system. So when a servo starts moving, it turns all the sensors off. So JMRI sees, you can't drive over that point. And when it finishes, it works out which one to do. I'll put the code up if you want to have a read of that. Feel free. If you've got any further questions, feel free. So that is how the ESP works. It talks to the MQTT system. And as I say, I can go in here and I can say I want that light to be on. And if I do that, sorry, if I managed to hit the button correctly, the light comes on. Right. So, situation, you've got this far, but you don't want to use MQTT Explorer. What you want to use is JMRI. So how do you use JMRI to do this? Well, this is where you come in. I'm just trying to think where these things are. Where is the connections? Preferences. Bring this up. I think it lives under here. So here we are, connections. So I've got a DCC++ connection, which drives my layout. That's the IP address of the DCC++ box. MQTT. You can go in, you can click add, and you can tell it what you want, and MQTT is on there. I'm not going to add one. I'm not going to add another one. It's already here. And what you want is that system there. And you come in here, and this is, oh look, it's the IP address. By default, it will say call it MQTT, and it'll connection prefix M. This is useful internally. You don't need to worry about it too much. We'll have a look in a minute and see where that comes in. You got the port, username, and password, and here are the topics. So light send and light receive. You can, in theory, tell JMRI to listen on one channel, which is the receive topic, and send instructions out on another. If you leave them together, it uses the same topic. So track/light/D0. This is the way to control it. JMRI will see it on that channel, and it will send the message out on that channel as well. So something else can say, I want to turn that light on. We're going to look at this in a future episode. We're going to look at how to control things using other devices. Some of these work quite nicely. Turnouts work nicely. Sensors work nicely. Lights work. Reporters are interesting. We will look at that at some point. Signal head, signal mast. To be honest, I don't use them, so I can't comment on that. Throttle. Oh, this one. It would be so lovely to have this bit do what I want it to do, but it doesn't. You can have MQTT enabled throttles, and the JMRI page tells you how to set that up. However, what I would want to be able to do is go into here, go into Panel Pro and say Tools, Throttles, give me a throttle. What I would love to be able to do when it opens up is come into here and say, right, I want to select a locomotive, I want to drive it, and I want the information to come out on this throttle topic. And you can do it. It's really, really simple. As it defaults, here we go. So power control is MQTT, which, yeah, it's not. It's not a valid poise for, never mind. So yeah, I've got throttles as DCC. If I set, I'm going to do that. if I tell this thing I want my MQTT to do throttles and I try and drive a train, it'll send all the messages out over MQTT and the trains won't move because DCC++ doesn't know to listen to it. What I like is I can control it from here and I get the information anyway, but yeah, don't get that. So hit save on that. Yeah, later. Not interested in restarting. But that connects, and then what we do is we come up here, Tools, and in this case, Tables, Lights. And now you've got up here all your lights, and this is every single one of them. Yeah. I don't have any on DCC++. Internal is like a virtual thing. MQTT, and this is where that M comes in. So here I've got M, which says this is a connection over MQTT. L, which says it is a light, so this is the system internal name. So it's saying this is an MQTT object, it is a light, and then this E0 is the bit I've put in. So I've got E0, as you say here, is the Leopard Junction stair lights. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to add some. So I've got over here, my hardware address is D0. I want to add a range because I want to add 4 of them. And create. There we go. Now, in theory, so now I've got MLD0. Now, in theory, I can click these buttons and you can see on the board the LEDs change. That's literally it. I mean, you can give these in here different names, so I'm going to give these some names and descriptions that might make slightly more sense. So D0 is signal D1 red. That's that. So if I do that, that is the red aspect for the loop line. If I go into D2 here, this one here, signal D2 red. That is the red aspect for the other one. So normally I want them like this. Oh, but I can come over here and I can go 0.25. And you see one of them gets a bit dimmer. And you get over here, state is intermediate. But if we go back into MQTT Explorer, D0 is now showing this intensity. This is the message it sends. This is all on the JMRI website. It does tell you how to do this sort of stuff, which is good because that's how I got it. So signal, let's say D1 is signal D2 green. So I can turn that on and I get the green light. Now notice here, I'm just turning the lights on and off. This has got nothing whatsoever to do with an actual signal. The system doesn't have a clue what these lights are for. It just knows. All it's doing is turning LEDs on and off. So here we are, I can do this. Turn them all on, turn them all off. And whenever you've done this, don't forget you go store all tables, panels and content, yada 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 yada. Now this works. It's not particularly useful, but it does work. So let's say I've got those two on there. I'm going to turn the green ones off. So we have 2 red aspects. That's the sort of situation I want it to be in. JMRI will remember that. What it doesn't do, unfortunately, is remember the intensity setting. So if I come over here, I can tell it to do that, but it won't remember that as an on-off. So yeah. So I can come in here and I say, right, my signal D1, I want to change the aspect of that, so I turn that one off, turn that one on, wrong one, turn that on. So let's do that again. So we start off with 2 reds, turn red one off, green one on. Whee! Training the loop line can go. Or not, as the case may be. That's basically how you set them up. There's other ways. I mean, there's other things you can do in JMRI. You can set up control panels and so on and so forth. But yeah, that is basically that. They come in here, they get a system name, which you've got a lot of control over. The ML bit will be constant. Like I say, I'm using the first letter to say which device it goes to. So I've got board D, where these two lights are. I've got boards A through I now, because I've got the centre board. I've got 9 of them. 8 have got controllers. There's A through H. And that's how it works. Everything else goes through this. So I mean, if I come into sensors, here I have all of my sensors. They're not all named. On here, they're all currently inactive because the layout track isn't powered up. So if I power the track up, pressing a button, lots of things go red on the screen, which shows where the locomotives are. And again, if I go into MQTT Explorer, kill the lights, go into sensors, we've now got active on some of the blocks. And if we look in here, you can see active on a few, and that's telling me where the trains are. Turnouts tells me the turnout settings, which have got all the other various sensors and so on and so forth on them. G5, G6 don't exist, I don't believe. No, they were set up when I was testing things. So I haven't got the relays and servos powered up. So yeah, but yeah. So that is an overview. I'm just going to disconnect that because I don't need it anymore and close that. This is a little overview, basically, of how to get stuff into JMRI. It is quite simple. Like I say, I'll put the code up on the GitHub site if you want to go in and have a little look at that. It is something that seems to be glossed over by various videos. They just sort of assume you know exactly what you're doing on here. But as you see, I've got various other little lights and such like on here. 3, 4, 5. Yeah, that's just because which one it's plugged into. 3 and 4 will eventually be other things. But yeah, that's that. So with that, I think I'm going to finish off by trying to power up the relays. I've got trains. So the route is set for the Flying Scotsman to do a run round. So I will come in here, I will select the Flying Scotsman. But she's got a red signal. Well, if I do that one and that one, to avoid it being an invalid signal, she's now got a signal. So off we go. And as she goes round, I can set the signal back to red. And she'll rumble round, and then we'll see. Da 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 da. There we are. Fat fingers, I'd click the wrong button. And she's going to come round here, and obviously the train can't see these signals. This is also in a hidden area. The purpose behind this is actually so when I get the automation system running, I can see what it's doing a little bit better. So we're going to bring her around. She's going to stop, just so we have a little bit of a train running in this one. Comes around here. Oh, there's a red signal. And stops. But excuse me. Yes, that's a little bit of an overview on what I'm doing with MQTT. It is actually really, really simple to use. Once you get an ESP32 connected to your network, which isn't that hard, especially if you're using the Ethernet, I've given it's even easier than if you're using the Wi-Fi, you can very easily get it to communicate using this system. And once you're communicating using this system, you can do just about anything with it. The key bit is, go into the preferences again, connections. The key bit is the topic names. If you want it to show up in this lights table, you have to use track/light to start with, otherwise it won't see it. It doesn't pick them up automatically. You have to go in and then add the device, and it will send out, like when I change that one, that sends out a topic track/light/D0/off. So you need to have something that will connect to that. But it's fairly straightforward. It works quite nicely. So with that, we shall leave Leopard Street for today. We will look into something else. Just store that again before I go. As usual, likes, comments, shares, subscriptions, more than welcome. If there's any further questions on this or on the code, if you have a look at it, feel free to ask. I'll try and answer them. I'm going to be doing a little bit more with this. I didn't really have time today to get too far into this. I want some more of these lights on. But this is how I control things. There's no wires between JMRI and the layout. It is pretty much all done via WeThrottle for driving trains and MQTT for everything else. That handles all of the lights, all of the sensors, all of the turnouts. Works really, really nicely. My thanks especially to Chris over at Wire and Wood, he did a video on this. Go check his channel out as well, because he's covered these as well quite nicely. I don't think he's gone into the code he uses so much, but he's sort of shown what you can do with it. Yeah, he put me onto this, so thanks to him, or possibly blame him. I don't know, one or the other. Anyway, that's it for this video. This will be going out Thursday. I hope you enjoy your Thursday evening and your Friday and your Saturday. There'll be another video Saturday evening, probably looking at some wagons. But until then, thank you very much, and goodbye.